At midnight, my grandma's shaking voice revealed an incredible secret that changed my life forever. Jake lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his heart racing with thoughts of his future. The clock ticked loudly, its sound echoing in the empty darkness of their small home. Just as he was drifting off, he was jolted awake by a trembling voice. "Jake!" It was Grandma Millie, her raspy tone breaking the late-night silence. He rushed to the living room, where shadows danced under the flickering light. There she sat, her face lined with worry and wisdom, beckoning him closer. "Sit down, child," she urged, her eyes glinting like silver coins. "I've got something to tell you." As she began her tale, the world outside faded away. She spoke of their family, of immigrants who navigated treacherous waters to find freedom, faces worn from sweat and hardship. Each word bled into Jake's soul, igniting a fire within him. He felt their struggles pulse in his veins, an unbreakable bond of tenacity and hope. "Your ancestors fought for everything, Jake. Every single dream, they had depended on strength." Tears pricked his eyes as he listened, feeling his heart swell with pride and desperation. How could he carry this legacy, this burden, when he was just one kid against a world that seemed impossibly stacked against him? Around him, wealthier kids flaunted their privileges, their laughter like knives in his chest. He was determined. He had to earn that scholarship, to escape this place and make them proud. Yet, self-doubt clawed at him, whispering that he would never be enough. As the night wore on, and Millie's stories wove a tapestry of struggle, Jake felt a warmth blooming within, a fire that tempered the chilly grasp of despair. But just when he thought he could rise to honor their legacy, disaster struck. A betrayal from a friend, a missed opportunity, and suddenly, the walls around him crumbled. His dreams felt unreachable, shadows of what could have been. In that darkest moment, Grandma Millie's voice echoed in the back of his mind, a steady whisper urging him to find purpose. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With renewed determination, Jake chose to fight not just for himself, but for those who believed in him, those who had believed in everyone before him. The voices of their struggles rang in his ears like a battle cry. "You're not just a face here. You carry history within you," he reminded himself. As he started to push back against the scorn of classmates who saw him as lesser, he realized he was deeper in than he had ever been. The echoes of his family's resilience gave him strength, urging him to confront the very biases that burdened their small, decent community. Now, he could see that each obstacle was a chance to forge respect not just for himself, but for all those chained by stigma. But as hope flickered brighter, shadows of the past loomed heavy. An unexpected twist loomed, a decision that would challenge everything he fought for. Would he stay quiet for the sake of acceptance, or would he rise up, risking it all, to become the voice of those silenced? The clock ticked down, the city slept, but Jake could feel the weight of their legacy pushing him forward. What would he choose in the end? Would he break free or be bound by fear? As the night grew deep, one thing was clear: the world was waiting for his response. The next morning, Jake awoke with the sun streaming through his window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. His heart still thudded from the weight of Grandma Millie's words. He felt that fire within him flicker, urging him to act. As he glanced at his reflection in the mirror, determination replaced the familiar self-doubt. He couldn't let fear dictate his choices anymore. At school, the atmosphere was tight with tension. The halls buzzed with whispers, and he could feel eyes on him, judgments wrapped in the hushed conversations of his classmates. They always seemed to be wondering, quietly assessing his worth. Jake gripped his backpack tightly, feeling its rough straps dig into his fingers. Each breath felt charged, like he was teetering on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap. The bell rang, and as he walked into history class, an idea began to form. The teacher had assigned a project on civil rights movements, and at that moment, everything clicked into place. If his ancestors had fought for their freedom, then he could do his part too, right here, right now. He pictured standing in front of the class, telling the stories of those who sacrificed for a better tomorrow. "Are you okay, man?" David, his best friend, asked, snapping Jake out of his thoughts. The concern in David's brown eyes sparked something. Jake's voice surged to the surface. "Yeah," he replied, a little unevenly. "But I think I'm done sitting back. I want to do something that matters." David raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Like what?" Jake hesitated. How could he explain the weight of history pressing against him? Instead, he said, "I want to lead a campaign, maybe organize a school assembly to talk about representation and the challenges we face. We can't shy away from these conversations anymore." David nodded slowly, processing Jake's words. "That sounds powerful, man. Just are you ready for all that? You know things could get messy." Doubt slipped back in like an unwelcome guest. "What if no one cares?" "They cared then, didn't they?" Jake's voice rose a little, defiance bubbling beneath the surface. "They fought. It's up to us to make sure those stories don't go unheard." With newfound resolve, Jake started gathering resources. He spent lunch picking up flyers, talking to teachers, and researching influential figures from their family's background. With every piece he uncovered, the urgency in his chest pulsed brighter like embers beneath the ash. He even managed to convince a teacher, Ms. Roberts, who had once understood his struggles, to help with the assembly. Weeks passed, and each day brought fresh challenges. Some classmates were supportive, but many derided his effort, mocking him with snickers and insults. It cracked his confidence a bit, but Jake clung tightly to Grandma Millie's words, using them as armor. Every single dream, they had depended on strength. As the day of the assembly approached, Jake's resolve wavered. What if no one showed up? What if it failed? He could already hear the whispers slinking through the hallways. He confided in David, who clapped him on the back. "You're not doing this alone. We'll stand with you." The morning of the assembly arrived, his heart racing like a freight train. The gym filled with hostile murmurs and annoying chatter. The microphone felt icy against his lips as he took the stage, staring out into the sea of faces. It was now or never. "Today, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for our ancestors, for those who were silenced." As he pushed through his fears, a sense of purpose enveloped him, igniting the fire within. But just as he thought he could break through the noise, a figure in the back stood up. As a wave of whispers spread like wildfire, Jake's heart sank. Would this be the moment it all fell apart? Jake's breath hitched as he recognized the figure. It was Chad, the class bully, flanked by his crew, smirking with the kind of arrogance that chilled Jake to the bone. The laughter that erupted from the back poured over him like ice water. Jake's heart raced, the heat of embarrassment flooding his cheeks. "Look at this dude trying to be a hero," Chad called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "What? You think you're Martin Luther King Jr. now?" Laughter erupted from his friends, and Jake's stomach twisted. For a moment, he almost stepped back from the microphone, the volume of their jeering drowning out his resolve. But then he thought of Grandma Millie. He thought of her stories of resilience and courage. He closed his eyes for a moment, grounding himself. "Actually," Jake replied, his voice steadier than he felt, "I'm trying to honor those who fought for justice." He glanced around the gym, searching for supportive faces. What we're discussing today matters. It's important for all of us to hear these stories. Chad's snickers continued, but Jake held his ground. He cleared his throat and leaned into the microphone. "You know what? I understand why some might laugh. Change is uncomfortable, but we're all here because we have a voice. And that voice matters." A silence swept across the gym, the laughter now replaced by tense murmurs. He felt uncomfortable eyes, some looking for further ammunition to shoot him down, but others sparked with curiosity. Even David nodded encouragingly from the side. Civil rights, representation, these aren't just words. They're happenings. They shaped lives. They shaped mine. Jake's pulse pounded in his ears as he pushed forward, fueled by a mix of fear and exhilaration. It's about standing up, even when it's hard. Even when people laugh. Chad rolled his eyes but took a step back, the tension between him and Jake palpable. A few students shifted in their seats, murmuring among themselves. Would this actually resonate? Jake shifted his gaze to Ms. Roberts, who stood with her arms crossed, a supportive smile across her face. He took a deep breath, honing in on the stories he gathered, the struggles, the victories, the silent moments of bravery that had gone uncelebrated for too long. He spoke about the ancestors who paved the way, the heroes who didn't back down. The energy shifted. The room buzzed with something akin to respect. And if we're honest, he added, a spark of courage igniting. I think we all just want to feel heard. So let us talk. Share our stories. We might surprise ourselves. Chad shifted again, his expression betraying a mix of annoyance and intrigue. But before he could retort, the gym doors opened, and in walked Mrs. Martinez from the front office. Is this assembly about to get more dedicated? She called out with a bright smile. Laughter broke through the tension, applause starting to ripple as new students joined the gathering. The whispers shifted. More people were paying attention as the assembly continued. Jake felt a growing sense of community, even as he caught sight of Chad's frustrated scowl. A flicker of victory ignited within him. Not everyone was laughing anymore. Some had even begun to nod along with his words. But just as he felt the warmth of camaraderie blossoming, another figure emerged, a teacher he had never expected. The one person he feared would shatter this tenuous moment. What would happen now? Their presence could change everything. Jake's heart raced. Had he really begun to shift the conversation around him? Or would this moment fall apart too? As the surprising figure stepped into the gym, Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was Mr. Thompson, the history teacher, who had a reputation for being both intimidating and unyieldingly critical. Jake felt the color drain from his face. The atmosphere shifted again, this time tinged with anxiety. What could Mr. Thompson possibly say to derail everything he had built in those few fragile moments? Jake noticed the murmur ripple through the students like a wave. Some whispered in confusion, others in anticipation. Chad's smirk returned, a predator sensing vulnerability in its prey. Jake swallowed hard. He felt the support he had begun to build tremble at the prospect of criticism from someone with authority. Mr. Thompson strode confidently to the front of the room, his expression unreadable. He paused, glancing from Jake to the crowd, as if weighing something heavy on the tip of his tongue. Silence clung to the room, thick and palpable, wrapping around Jake like a binding rope. Interesting conversation we have here, Mr. Thompson finally said, his voice low but steady. And it's about time. He focused on Jake. This topic has been brushed aside too long. Jake, mistaken beliefs have a habit of sticking around like a nasty stain, and they need to be challenged. Jake's heart surged with a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Mr. Thompson had a reputation for his fierce debates and sharp words, and he could easily revert back to a stern lecture. And yet, Mr. Thompson continued, I wonder, how many students here actually know the stories you speak of? There was a subtle challenge in his voice, and Jake felt his stomach twist again. How many understand the cost of what we discuss? The crowd shifted uneasily, a few heads hanging low. Jake felt the moment of camaraderie tinged with the pressure of truth. With every passing second, he sensed the weight of history pressing down on him, and with it, a flicker of defiance ignited. I think that's what I'm trying to share, Jake said, his voice surprisingly strong. We need to know more than just names and dates. We need to hear their voices. If we let those stories in, change can actually happen. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, intrigued, and in that instant, the gym seemed to catch its breath. Other students began to lift their heads, some whispering excitedly to one another. This was a moment, a spark. You're right, Thompson admitted, surprising Jake further. History doesn't teach itself. Here as a thought, let us open this up. Are there others who want to share their stories or thoughts on this topic? There was a hush, and Jake felt the weight lift slightly. David stepped up first, his voice shaky, yet clear as he shared his experience growing up in a diverse neighborhood and watching friends face hardships. Others began standing up, one after another, their voices weaving a rich tapestry of shared struggles and triumphs. The gym was alive, a living room filled with laughter and sometimes tears, pouring out stories that connected them all. Jake felt a surge of gratitude. But as they spoke, he noticed Chad glaring from the back, his jaw tightened, fists clenched. The tension crackled like electricity. Would Chad lash out again, determined to wreck this moment? Just as the energy heightened, whispers of anticipation and fear bubbled in Jake's chest. Could he hold on to this warmth, or was it too good to be true? Jake caught sight of Mr. Thompson, who stood silently observing, an approving nod mingling with uncertainty in his gaze. The conversation was pushing boundaries, but it was clear now. This was just the beginning. Had they turned a corner, Or would Chad's next move send them spiraling back into silence? The clock ticked ominously in the background, a countdown reminiscent of a storm brewing, ready to break. Jake's heart raced as more students spoke, but the threat lurking in the shadow of the gym was hard to ignore. Chad's glare felt like a spotlight, cutting through the warmth and light of shared stories. The laughter, the tears, they were miracles unfolding in front of him. But would Chad let them live? As Sarah, a quieter girl from English class, stood up and began to share her experiences with prejudice, Jake felt the atmosphere shift again. For each word she spoke, Chad's expression hardened like stone. Jake swallowed hard, the weight of worry pounding in his chest. "What makes you think anyone cares?" Chad finally called out, his voice echoing with a mocking tone that sliced through the gym like a knife. The laughter faded, replaced by a trembling silence. Jake's stomach dropped as he watched Chad push through, the predator coming out with fangs bared. "Maybe you all should just stick to your little fairy tales," Chad sneered, "because real life isn't that easy. People don't change just because you tell a sad story." Jake felt a surge of anger. The feeling burned brightly, almost overwhelming. Was Chad really going to drag them back down? He stepped forward, feeling the need to protect not just his moment, but everyone's courage in that room. "That's not true," Jake shouted back, the words spilling out before he could hold them in. "You think just because you don't understand someone's pain, it doesn't matter? Stories matter. We matter. This isn't just a fairy tale. This is real." For a heartbeat, everything seemed to hang in the air, like a fragile thread pulled tight. The students around him lifted their heads, their expressions a mixture of hope and fear. They looked to Jake as if he might break the spell. Mr. Thompson stepped closer, his eyes piercing and serious. "Everyone deserves a voice, Chad. It's easy to dismiss what you don't understand, but that's the first step toward ignorance." Chad's smirk faltered for just a moment, and in that moment, Jake could see a flicker of uncertainty, maybe even fear. Jake took that moment and ran with it. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, each pulse giving him more strength. "Let us hear from everyone," Jake declared, his voice gaining momentum. "Let us keep this going. Who else has something to say?" The gym erupted with a mixture of nervous laughter and applause. As more students began to rise, the laughter returned, and the energy shifted back to unity. Anisha shared her story about her immigrant parents, how their struggles became her drive. Joshua opened up about the friendship he formed with a boy who had been bullied, how that led to him standing up for others. The tears began to mix with excitement, and Jake felt a storm surge inside him, one that was powerful and genuine, a force pushing against Chad's negativity. He turned to Mr. Thompson, who stood there with an approving smile, and the tightness in Jake's chest began to loosen. But just then, Jake felt a harsh shove against his shoulder. Chad had pushed past and stood looming over Jake, his fists clenched and jaw set. "You think you can just take over?" he spat. "You think you can make people care? You're delusional. You're just a kid with a dream." Jake's heart sank. He could feel the chill of fear creep back in, but he refused to let it win. Could he face Chad, with the weight of all his classmates behind him, or was this moment about to spiral out of control? As the room filled with voices, a sudden ruckus at the back drew everyone's attention. A teacher had stepped in, worry etched across her face. "What is going on here?" she said sharply. Jake's heart raced again, and he felt the eyes of his classmates shift toward him, a question silently hanging in the air. Would he crumble now? Or would the power of truth and unity transform this moment into something bigger? The choice lay before him, and all the right voices in his heart urged him to speak. What would he say next? Would his words hold enough weight to keep the tide turning? The clock ticked louder, and the storm in the room seemed ready to either break apart or break through. The murmur of whispered conversations filled the gym, the atmosphere charged with tension. Jake felt the pressure mount, every heartbeat echoing in his ears. Chad's presence loomed larger than life, his posture tense, fists balled as if ready for a fight. But that didn't matter. What mattered were the gazes of his fellow students filled with expectation, hope, and a little bit of fear. "Chad, you don't get it," Jake blurted, desperation coloring his voice. "This isn't about me or fairy tales. It's about us. Our stories matter. We're here because we believe in each other, and that is stronger than any negative thought you throw our way." Some students shifted uneasily, ready to bolt. Others nodded, a glimmer of determination sparking in their eyes. They were tired of being silent. "Why are you so afraid to listen?" Jake called, turning to the crowd. "You all know life isn't easy, but we can't just give up because Chad tells us to. Come on, let us keep sharing. Each of us has something that can break through the walls he has built." Chad laughed mirthlessly, but Jake noticed a slight twitch at the corners of his lips. "Just a flicker. Look at yourselves." Chad shot back. "You think you can change the world with a little pep talk and crying sessions? Pathetic." But Jake refused to back down. "If you think we're pathetic, that says more about you than us. We're standing here, right now, together. That takes courage." Holding onto the spark that flared inside him, Jake took a deep breath, then beckoned to a girl who had been hiding in the back. "Emily, come join us. You've got a story too. Everyone here has a story that matters." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. The pressure of the moment made her hesitate, but the soft encouragement from her classmates nudged her forward. With trembling hands and a shaky voice, she began to speak. "I just want to say I used to feel so alone. I moved here last year, and it was scary. I thought nobody would care about me. But then, you guys welcomed me. You made me feel like I belonged." Jake felt a rush of warmth. As Emily spoke, other students began to stand, drawing strength from her story. Each voice added another thread to their fabric of courage. Rachel spoke about battling anxiety. Liam shared his struggle with loss. The gym was alive with emotion, stories weaving together, creating a tapestry of vulnerability. Chad, wearing a look of deepening anger, crossed his arms. Jake could feel his confidence rising along with each shared story. They weren't backing down. But suddenly, like ice water dumped on a fire, Chad stepped forward, glaring at the group. "You want to talk about belonging? Fine," he shouted. "But what do you think you're going to do when life throws something at you worse than some high school drama? You can't just sing Kumbaya and make the world better." A nervous hush fell over the room. The excitement dimmed, and Jake's heart raced. Had he pushed too far? Was Chad ready to retaliate in a way that could tear this fragile moment apart? "Maybe you're right, Chad," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. "But it starts here. It starts now. Maybe one day we'll face something tougher, but I know we'll face it together." The silence hung in the air. Everyone seemed to hold their breath. Chad's bravado faltered just slightly, a crack in his armor. Jake's heartbeat echoed in his ears, but he pressed on, determined to hold the moment before it shattered. "Don't you see? Together, we can weather any storm." Just then, a wide-eyed student at the back raised her hand. "Jake, what if Chad is right about one thing?" She hesitated. "Life can hit harder than anything we've said here. What if we can't stand together when it happens?" That question pierced through the tension, sending ripples of uncertainty throughout the crowd. Jake's breath caught. What if she was right? Could their unity hold up against a life that seemed to promise nothing but struggle? As whispers began to flow again, Jake felt his stomach churn with questions that refused to quiet. Would their shared strength really be enough to carry them through? Where would they all go from here? Jake's heart sank under the weight of the girl's question. Suddenly, what had felt like a rallying cry turned into a shaking foundation. He glanced around the gym, searching faces that mirrored his own turmoil. They were scared, uncertain, but trying to grasp on a hope. Emily fidgeted with her hands, her earlier confidence wavering. Rachel exchanged a worried glance with Liam, their faces clouded with doubt. Chad's expression was carved with triumph. The darkness he had cast loomed like a shadow over them. He had struck right where it hurt. Jake inhaled deeply. The room felt heavy. What if we don't have all the answers?" he said, testing the waters of a new realization. "But what if that's okay?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Students began to nod slowly, processing the possibility. "We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be willing to stand together even when things get tough." He remembered the countless hours spent helping his younger sister through her homework, the time she would bang her head against the table, completely frustrated. They didn't solve every problem right away, but together, they found ways around each hurdle. If that had worked for them, why couldn't it work here? Chad rolled his eyes, arms still crossed, but Jake could see the facade cracking just a little. "What do you even know about tough times?" Chad shot back, looking at Jake as if he were a joke. But the anger in his voice lacked a spark. "When was the last time your life really mattered?" Jake's heart raced, anger surging through him. Fine, you want to know what tough is? He took a step closer. I've had days where it felt like everything was cascading down and I couldn't breathe. Where I had to pretend everything was okay while inside I was breaking apart. The temple of his feelings quieted, and he could hear the collective breaths of the audience. We all fight our battles, Chad. Some are heavier than others. But we're brave enough to show up to the fight, and that's what matters. There was a moment of silence, like the breaths were held for too long. Then, like the pricking of a pin in a balloon, Jake felt a shift. A girl in the front row, who had remained silent until now, stood with teary eyes. I felt that too, she said, her voice shaking. Just yesterday, I thought about not coming back to school. But I didn't want to miss today. As if a dam had burst, students began to talk. Their stories spilled forth like water. It wasn't perfect. They cried. They laughed. They shared burdens that felt too heavy to bear. Slowly, the air crackled with reaffirming energy, a fire building back up. Yes, life can hit hard, one boy shouted. And we might fall sometimes, but it doesn't mean we have to fall alone. Jake felt something powerful swell within him. There was warmth now, a light illuminating the shadows that Chad had cast. They might face the unknown and the struggles, but they were getting stronger together. A network of voices echoed in the gym, a tapestry woven by their truths and their pain. Jake turned back to Chad, challenges swirling in his gaze. Isn't that what being human is all about? He asked, finding strength in our weakness and allowing each other to be vulnerable? Chad looked taken aback, his wall of bravado splintering with every word spoken, every truth unveiled. Just then, the bell rang with its piercing shrill, and Jake's heart pounded. They had created a connection. But as he glanced back at Chad, just outside the circle of trust they had forged, a question gnawed at him. Could Chad still be saved from his own darkness? As students filed out in a wave of emotion, laughter mingled with tears, they left behind a moment icy with uncertainty. Would they be able to hold on to this newfound bond, or would the struggles of life threaten to undo everything? Jake could feel the weight of those questions pressing on him. Would they have the courage to face whatever came next? Jake stepped into the hallway, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Students had spilled out of the gym, their voices rising and falling like the tide, a chaotic chorus of emotions. He felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. They had started to share their truths, but how long could they keep this momentum alive? As he walked toward his locker, he caught sight of Emily standing by the wall, her brows furrowed in thought. He approached her, sensing that they shared an unspoken weight. "Hey, how are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I don't know, Jake," she replied, biting her lip. It felt good to talk, but what if tomorrow we're back to feeling alone again? What if Chad doesn't change? What if he just goes after us harder? Her voice trembled slightly, the flicker of doubt in her expression unnerving him. Jake hesitated. She was right. The world outside the gym felt just as hostile as it had before. But they had taken a step. "We have each other now. We just need to remember what it felt like today," he offered, though even he felt the uncertainty gnaw at his optimism. Meanwhile, voices echoed from a nearby classroom. Liam and Rachel were debating whether to host a follow-up meeting for their newfound alliance. The buzz pulsed through Jake like electricity. "We can't just let it end here," Jake spoke up, joining their huddle. "What if we organized a support group? We can meet after school, share more stories, and really build something together." Rachel's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing, Jake. But I worry about Chad and those who might try to bring us down. There's a risk." "Yeah," Liam added, frowning. "What if they make fun of us? Or worse, what if they decide to leave us alone?" Jake could feel the tension rising. The earlier camaraderie felt precarious now, like a tower built on shaky ground. "Look, we can't let fear dictate what we do. If we stand together, it's harder for anyone to tear us apart. We can't let the darkness win," he urged, his voice steady. But a small voice echoed darkly in the back of his mind. What if it did? Emily, catching the pulse of his thoughts, squeezed his arm. "Let us do it. For ourselves, for everyone who feels lost. We can't keep this feeling bottled up." With a breath of determination, Jake nodded. "We'll talk to everyone tomorrow, get things rolling. It's not going to be easy, but we have to keep this fire alive." Just then, a raucous laugh erupted from nearby, and Jake turned to find Chad strutting down the hall with a couple of his friends, all eyes glinting with mockery. Jake met Chad's gaze, the earlier victory now feeling distant. Chad winked, a smirk plastered on his face, and Jake braced himself for the inevitable sneer that was sure to come. "Look who's trying to play hero now," Chad called, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Good luck with your little support group. Maybe you should keep your tissues handy. I can't wait to see you all cry." A chill swept through the hall. Jake's stomach twisted. He felt like he might crumble. What were they really doing? But then he heard Emily's voice, low and fierce. "We're not afraid of you, Chad. We know you're just hiding behind your jokes," she retorted, and for a moment, a collective breath from their small group seemed to draw a line between them and the darkness. Fueled by Emily's courage, Jake raised his head. "Yeah, Chad, we're breaking the silence. You can't silence us anymore." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Could they really find the strength to rise above? Would they be able to face the backlash? The air hung thick with uncertainty. As Jake walked past Chad, he felt a wave of fear blending with determination. Could his words resonate beyond this moment? Would they find solace in the storm ahead? The truth hung heavy, and Jake wondered, what would it take for them to truly break free? Jake woke up the next morning to a familiar sound, the hum of the school bus rumbling to a stop outside. His stomach was a knot of nerves as he pulled on his favorite hoodie and headed downstairs. He could sense the quiet pulse of anticipation in the air. Change was coming. He could feel it as he stepped onto the bus. It felt different. The usual pretension among students seemed to fade. A few of them actually nodded in recognition. Jake settled into his seat, glancing at Emily, who sat down next to him, her eyes bright with determination. "You ready for today?" she asked, her voice steady. "Yeah, I think so," he replied, trying to match her confidence. Their usual chatter gave way to a collective buzz about the support group. It spread like wildfire from one student to another, igniting hope in unlikely places. By the time they reached school, the hallways were alive with whispers of camaraderie and curiosity. In homeroom, Jake watched as Liam gathered the courage to speak up. "Guys, we really need to go through with this support group idea," he announced, his hands resting on the desk. "Chad can't be our prison anymore." The class fell silent, and for a split second, everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting for someone to dissent, but it didn't happen. Instead, several voices piped up in agreement. Students who had once felt isolated began sharing their own stories, their own struggles. Jake felt a flicker of something bright and warm in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never truly experienced before. As the day dragged on, though, the looming shadow of Chad still hung over them. During lunch, Jake caught sight of him at the back of the cafeteria, laughing with his crowd of supporters and pointing at their table. The laughter felt sharp, mocking the newfound bond Jake was trying to weave. Rachel leaned in across the table, picking up on Jake's tension. "We can't let him win. We have to be louder than his jokes. We won't let fear drown our voices," she said, her eyes fierce. Just then, Emily stood up, her heart pounding. "Hey everyone," she called, drawing the attention of the entire lunchroom. Conversations hushed as eyes turned toward her. "We're having our first meeting for the support group after school today. We're breaking the silence together. Please come." Jake's heart raced. He could feel the weight of each gaze, the mix of curiosity and skepticism. He held his breath, waiting for Chad's response. But the words that left Chad's lips were not what Jake expected. "Boy, this should be fun. I can't wait to see you all sob," Chad sneered, then laughed, tossing a crumpled paper ball in their direction. Instead of retreating, Jake felt just a bit more resolute. "No, Chad, you're not stopping us," he called back, surprising himself with the strength in his voice. A murmur of support rippled through the students at their table. Students who had been shrinking back nodding at Chad before now stood with them, eyes hardened with newfound solidarity. After lunch, whispers about the meeting continued. As the last bell rang, Jake felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Would anyone show up? Would they have the courage to sit together and share their truths again? The meeting room slowly filled. They were timid at first, exchanging nervous glances, but as Jake spoke up about his own experiences, he saw heads nodding in agreement. One by one, others followed. Then, suddenly, the door swung open, and in strutted Chad, flanked by his cronies. The room went quiet, tension thick like fog. His smirk faded, then morphed into something darker. "What's this? A little therapy session?" he mocked, squinting at Jake. Jake felt the weight of their gazes on him, the air electric with fear and expectation. Could this really be the moment everything changed? What are you going to do about it? Jake shot back, fist clenched. Chad stepped closer, but Jake felt the surge of bravery coursing through him. He could see his friends rallying behind him, their faces set with determination. As Chad opened his mouth to respond, the room held its breath, and Jake realized he was about to confront not just Chad, but his own deepest fears too. Would this confrontation ignite everything they had built together, or would it shatter their fragile resolve? Jake's heart raced as they faced off, each moment stretching into eternity. What would it take to push back against the tide of fear? The tension in the room felt like a live wire, pulsing and crackling under the weight of unspoken fears. Jake stood face to face with Chad, adrenaline racing through him. The world around them dimmed, every sound blurring into the background except for the pounding of his heart. Jake, you think you're some kind of hero because you're sharing sad stories? Chad sneered, his bravado echoing in the now silent room. It's pathetic. But Jake felt different. A warm wave of courage surged through him, igniting the fire that Grandma Millie had sparked. You think I care about what you call me? He shot back, voice steady and strong. This isn't about me. It's about all of us who felt like we don't belong. The weight of vulnerability hung in the air, a tender thread connecting students who had once felt so isolated. For a moment, Jake glanced around the room, faces flickering with recognition, some even nodding in agreement. It was like a collective breath was being held, a shared moment of understanding that they were stronger together. Chad stepped closer, fists clenched. You don't even know what tough really is. You'll go back to your little lives after school, and I'll still be here. I'll still be. He gestured broadly, his arrogance spilling over like a dam about to burst. The one everyone fears. Fear? Is that what drives you? Jake replied, his conviction deepening. How many times do you have to build your walls before you realize it only keeps you trapped inside? We might not have all the answers, but together, we're learning to break those walls down. Chad's expression faltered for a moment, and Jake seized that flicker of doubt. What are you so scared of, Chad? You're not just a bully. You can break free too. The tension hung in shreds like spider silk. Would Chad attack, or was there something more beneath the surface? Gripped by courage, one of Chad's former friends raised her voice. Chad, you need to stop this. We all feel pain. What you're doing is cowardice, not strength. The crowd's murmur began to swell, a wave of unity rising as they rallied behind Jake. Yeah, someone yelled from the back. We're tired of this. We deserve to be heard. The feelings cemented into something solid, a realization that they weren't alone in their fears. The more they spoke, the brighter their collective light shone, illuminating the very cracks in Chad's bravado. Jake stepped back, letting the renewed voices of his classmates carry the weight. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about standing up for each other. This is our time to be brave. The air shifted, Chad's smirk fading at the corners. He glanced at his crew, the fragility of self-assuredness beginning to show. In that moment, an unexpected ally rose from the depths of silence. Ms. Roberts, the teacher who had championed Jake, walked in. What is happening in here? She demanded, eyes fierce and unwavering. Just a little truth-telling, Ms. Roberts, Jake responded, emboldened by the moment, energized by shared struggles. But Chad was quick. Yeah? They think they can change the world with some stories. His sneer was unyielding, yet his voice wavered, revealing a crack that Jake had suspected. Ms. Roberts surveyed the room, strong and unyielding. You think stories don't matter? They shape us. They help us connect, make us human. If you don't understand that, you're missing out on the best parts of life. Jake's heart swelled, grounding him in fiery hope. This was it. This was the moment they could all pivot toward something greater. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, feeling the warmth of solidarity behind him. We're done letting fear hold us back. Every one of us carries a story that deserves to be told. This isn't about being right or wrong. It's about being real. The energy in the room shifted one last time, and Jake could almost feel the turning of a tide within. Chad, we're inviting you to hear us, he said firmly, his voice steady as a river current. You don't get to act like you're untouchable. Underneath it all, I believe there's a person who can join us. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. Chad's eyes flicked around the room, surprise, confusion, and perhaps something deeper shone through. The crowd began to chant gently, "Join us, join us," each voice rising until the last echoes of negativity slipped away. And for a moment, the world outside the gym came to a standstill. Chad's expression tumbled, lost, searching for what to say. Then, the faintest glimpse of vulnerability surfaced. "I don't know how." In that instant, the air was electric with possibility. Jake stepped closer, heart racing. "Then let us figure it out together." As Chad's demeanor softened, a collective breath echoed through the gym, a shift taking shape. Here and now, a path forward unfolded, a chance to redefine who they were. The room exploded with voices, laughter, and hope. Tender hearts winced, but no longer alone. They were standing on the edge of overcoming, ready to take the leap into a future brightened by unity and understanding. Together, Jake called over the fervor, and in that moment, he felt the magnificent power of a community awakening. This was the beginning. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait, not even one more second to share. Your voice matters just as much.